to Charlie Kirk's murder, and how Andrew somehow got an apology from Alistair Campbell. Journalist Helen Joyce will be joining me as she talks about trans activists weaponising the justice system in the latest on the Graham Linehan arrest saga after my interview with the Father Ted creator. Let's just say Graham is far from the only person who's been affected. And Free Speech Union's Connie Shaw finally reveals the full truth behind her cancellation at Leeds University. And we've got comedians answering some crazy culture conundrums from our live studio audience. But first, the news with Bethany Elsey.
Good evening, I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The former world boxing champion Ricky Hatton has been found dead at his home in Greater Manchester. He was 46. Police say they're not treating his death as suspicious. Hatton won world titles at light welterweight and welterweight, but it was also his down-to-earth personality that made him one of the most popular British boxers. Hitman, as he was known throughout his career, had a number of iconic fights against Costa Tszyu, Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. After retiring, he'd spoken openly about his struggles with mental health and drug addiction, but he was due to make a comeback this December. Hatton's former manager, Frank Warren, said he always gave everything.
He was accessible. You know, he was a fan's friend. He was like the bloke. I mean, he'd be down the pub with them. He would, you know, go to the match. He was a massive Man City fan. You know, he was just well-loved. He was a really well-loved boxer. You know, the fans adored him. You know, when his career was, you know, when he retired, he'd come along to shows. If you introduced him into the ring, he got the biggest cheer out of everybody. You know, that was the big chant, wasn't it? There's only one Ricky Hatton, and that's the truth. There was only one Ricky Hatton.
The Prime Minister has condemned the violence during yesterday's rally in central London, saying he will not stand for assaults on police. 26 officers were injured and 24 people arrested at the Unite the Kingdom march, organised by Tommy Robinson, which saw around 150,000 people take part. Sir Keir Starmer said peaceful protest is core to British values, but added that we will never surrender our flag to those who use it as a symbol of division. Around 5,000 people also attended a counter-protest organised by Stand Up to Racism. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has accused the Prime Minister of lying to Parliament over what he knew and when over Peter Mandelson's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. It's emerged Sir Keir Starmer was given a report detailing the peer's relationship with the convicted paedophile before Lord Mandelson was named ambassador to the US. But Downing Street says he was economical with the truth before his appointment. Peter Mandelson was sacked on Thursday after damning emails he sent to Epstein were published. Donald Trump's top diplomat has reissued his concern over Israel's attack on Hamas inside Qatar as he starts a two-day visit to the Middle East. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio prayed at the Western Wall in Jerusalem alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Rubio said the US president was not happy with the strike on Qatar, which killed 5 members of Hamas, but that it will not change the alliance between the two countries. And just to bring you some breaking news before I finish up, Prince Harry has defended his decision to speak out against his family, saying his conscience is clear. The Duke of Sussex spoke to The Guardian while visiting Ukraine's capital after meeting with the King earlier this week. He came under fire after the publication of his book Spare and his Netflix documentary Harry and Meghan, but he told the paper that he feels the press want to believe that he's miserable, but he insists he isn't and that he's happy with his life. You're up to date. I'll have more for you in an hour's time.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Something terrible happened this week. Terrible for a human being, terrible for a wife and 2 young children. Terrible for Western liberal democracy. A man was assassinated because of his beliefs. Of course, that's happened before, and it's always a tragedy when violence supersedes tolerance. But it's one of those beliefs in particular that makes this such a pivotal moment at such a pivotal time for our society. Charlie Kirk believed in debate. He believed in debate so much that he made it his life's work, travelling around the globe, seeking out those who might disagree with him, particularly the young in places of learning, and he instigated conversations. And he did so with respect and compassion and in a free exchange of differing ideas. That in itself seems radical in this age of polarised discourse, which in reality is so often just polarised insults. Just look at the accusations that have been so carelessly, maliciously slung about before and after his death. Racist, homophobic, transphobic. Yet it's apparent from any of Charlie Kirk's output that before we even get to the content of his arguments, just seeing how he talked to anyone, the content of his character reveals someone who lived by the highest examples of his faith. Kind, respectful, warm, open and accepting of all. Which to those who've tried so hard to trample his name, particularly in the aftermath of his murder, in order to justify and even shamelessly celebrate it, is the real threat. Not Charlie's ideas, but the civil, open exchange of them. Of course, he hoped to persuade people that his ideas were right. That's what debate is. But more importantly, he recognised the need to create a space for people to be listened to and to be heard. He recognised that a generation were being silenced, and he sought to rectify that. A society even told what to think, not how to think. That in fact, to think, to question, was in itself hateful. All of us silenced by #NoDebate. And when that no longer worked, people were then silenced through shame, given labels like far-right and Nazi, so they were no longer deemed worthy of dialogue, could be excluded from conversation. And now that that is no longer working, well, we saw just how far someone was willing to go to finally silence Charlie. So, of course, he is a martyr to having a voice and using it. That was the gift he gave so many in life, which will no doubt increase 1,000-fold in death. And the point so spectacularly missed by his ideological opponents, even now, as his thoughts are so grossly misrepresented by a media and political class who should know better, but have only revealed how lazy they are, how unwilling to even source whatever out-of-context snippet that serves their desired narrative, was that Charlie Kirk offered everyone an opportunity, a gift. Debate is the forum to test your thoughts, to formulate them, to express them, to counter, to change, to adapt. In disagreement, you have the opportunity to forge your own ideas for the better and make them stronger. And many, many people took him up on that offer. But one person thought it was easier to murder someone than to talk to them. And far, far too many people seem to think that that is acceptable. So scared, so terrified have they become of debate, which is precisely why the rest of us have to continue by his example. So we don't live in a society where it's normalised that talking and violence become the same thing. In a small tribute to Charlie Kirk, I'd like to dedicate tonight's show to him. May his memory be a blessing to his family. And if you disagree with anything I've said here, let's talk. Joining me now is the host of the Winston Marshall Show, Winston Marshall himself. Hello, Winston. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. You've just flown in from America. You've been there these last few days. What was the response when this tragedy happened?
Well, perhaps we can just go straight to what I think the significance of this heinous assassination is. Charlie's opinions were mainstream conservative thought in America, not just of the boomer generation, but also of young conservatives in America. In fact, he was the figurehead of the young conservative movement, of the young MAGA movement. It wasn't just the horrific assassination that we all saw on social media. It was the reaction to it. We saw how his detractors, those who have vilified him, reacted with glee, with happiness. And not only did we see it, a lot of normal people, a lot of normies, a lot of people who don't normally pay attention to politics didn't just see the murder. They also saw how their friends and neighbours were reacting to that murder, and it horrified them. It made them understand exactly what was going on around them. And actually, this is maybe the significance of free speech. One of the other important parts of free speech, we can see what other people are thinking. And I think this is a similar moment. September 10th, 2025 is a similar moment to October 7th, 2023, where here in London, I remember seeing, as soon as October 8th maybe, celebrations. Israel had not responded. Celebrations of what had happened on October 7th in Israel, that pogrom, that horrible pogrom of the heinous violence and murder we were seeing then. We saw who our neighbours were. And actually, it's helpful to see who your neighbours were, because it helps us to understand how best to act next. And I think what will transpire is that we're at a point now, and I don't want to use the term turning point, because that was the name of his organisation, but it seems it is a turning point, because when people act this way, how exactly are we supposed to be reconciliatory with them? If we know how gleeful they are in such times, how exactly are we supposed to form any sort of alliance, any sort of compromise to build they don't want the same future of us as us. They want to tear this all down. We saw this, in fact, this actually plays out in the statistics, because a lot of people are comparing right-wing violence with left-wing violence. And I think it's pretty clear that at both extremes, I hate to do whataboutism, but at both extremes there is a lot of violence that goes on. But what's the difference, I think, between the right and left? And there's a recent poll that shows this. In America, those who identify as left of centre in politics, this is a recent poll, 48% said they believed that murder of Elon Musk was somewhat justifiable. 55% said murder of Donald Trump is somewhat justifiable. That means the majority of those who are left of centre in politics think in some circumstances murder is OK, that violence is OK. That doesn't play out at all on the right. It's a completely different story. So we're really now awake, and I sound awfully woke saying that, saying we're awake, but we now see, because of free speech, we now see what we're facing.
Yeah, I mean, those statistics, but also their gleefulness there in that reaction, I guess it speaks to the most incredible thing here is how proud they are with their opinion, how they're not ashamed by any means, by actually the fact that they think that they're going to be celebrated within their bubble for having these terrible reactions.
2 nights ago, I was at a vigil for Charlie in Washington Square Park in New York City. There was probably about 30 of us. It was evening time, it was getting dark. There were some young students there, some were crying, some had candles. There was a little choir, there was a string section playing hymns and singing hymns, and a mourning hymn. And really there was a lot of grief for these. Some of the kids were really upset. And about halfway through, like demons, some couple of guys, black-clad, came in, smiling like this, coming up into our faces, filming us, going like this, and then started shouting, he was a fascist. I mean, they were acting like demons. And then they backed up and said, free, free Palestine, as if that had anything to do with what Charlie Kirk was about. What on earth? But then actually it makes sense, because it's all part of the same ideology. They say free Palestine. They don't want free Palestine from Hamas. They want free Palestine from Israel. They're not pro-Palestine. They're pro-Hamas. That's exactly what's going on. It's part of the same ideology. It's anti-Western. It's anti-British. It's anti-American. They wanted to tear down everything that Charlie was about, not because he was pro-free speech. They don't care about that. It's because of his ideas, which are fundamentally pro our civilization.
Yes, but I guess that argues the opposite of what I was saying, which is that one of the foundations of our civilization, of course, is this idea of free speech that he embodied so well. And when you watch these clips that have they've been on social media for a long time now, but they've just absolutely been pushed out there these last few days. But how he was so willing to talk to everybody, and how scared people must be that he was willing to go out there and express these ideas. Do you think that the fact that they're so willing to go to murder and celebrate it just shows how afraid they are, how rubbish their ideas are, frankly?
Yeah, clearly, that's obviously the case. Look, I had the privilege of going on Charlie's show a couple of times, and we disagreed. And I'm going to have to dig up these old clips when we disagreed about a couple of things. But it was such a great conversation, because we were able to go deeper on the things. We both chiseled each other in our ideas, chiseled our ideas, rather. And I even look back at some of my messages with him. Again, we were disagreeing on stuff, but he was so curious. He wanted to understand. He pushed me. Why do you think that way? What is it? What am I missing? He came at it with total humility. Now, it might be the case that in some of those debates you see on college campuses that he was a little bit more pugilistic, and that's the kind of nature of it. But if you see him on his show, if you see him in private, you see a different Charlie. His detractors only saw the very worst of him, and perhaps the most viral things. They might not even be true about him. Well, and there's a lot of stuff I'm seeing on X that have been said about him, like what Alistair Campbell said, just was not true. And so they've misportrayed.
Same with Stephen King, and they've had to backtrack because they've taken something out of context.
Yes.
Doesn't that also reveal how information has been absorbed by certain members of our kind of cultural media class, where they just will take a snippet, and if that seemingly fits with whatever they've been told, this guy is a far-right white supremacist, then that's what they're so willing to spread.
As well as exposing our neighbours, it's also exposed the media classes. It's not just these types who have behaved this way, jumped to conclusions. But I note when there's, let's say, an incident of far-right violence, let's say Jan 6th, for example, we don't hear Lewis Goodall suddenly going, what about the BLM riots? What about all the far left? What about the 25 people killed in the BLM riots? So they don't do any whataboutery then, but now they're doing it. Now that, well, there's violence from the left as well, you know, it's not just from one side. These are not journalists, they're political activists. And this is another thing that this heinous assassination has exposed to us.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been a terrible week. I'm very grateful to you coming to join us and give us your perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause, please, for Winston Marshall. Next on Free Speech Nation, can overhearing sexism make you a victim of sexual harassment? That's just one of the questions that my studio audience will be throwing at me and my comedian guests after the break. See you in 2 minutes.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Josh Howie. My comedian guests this evening are Jonathan Cogan and Steve N. Allen. Is this your royal wavy?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the royal one.
Also, people don't know this about you, but Jonathan is a hand model.
That's my deep shame, and you've revealed it on national television.
Genuinely, he is a hand model. Anytime you
have a look, guys. Eyes are up here, though. Don't forget.
Yeah,
okay, there we go.
Is it lingerie or glamour? What do you do?
Say again, sorry?
Is it lingerie or glamour? What kind of modelling those hands
all
do?
kinds of hand jobs, really. Just whatever. Mostly sort of Japanese businessmen in a kind of barn out in the country. So it's great. It's, you know, paid. I do it for free. But the point is, we have a good time doing it.
He has genuinely beautiful hands. They're so soft. Anyway, look.
You told me you were Japanese.
What? How are you? You right?
I'm doing all right, thanks. Yeah, these hands sadly can't earn any money. Not anymore.
These are rough hands at work. 20 minutes a night as a stand-up. Fair enough. Well, we're going to get some questions from our audience. Our first question is from Tavi.
My question is, does BBC Women's Hour know what a woman is?
Yeah, indeed. Does BBC Women's Hour know what a woman is? Dame Jenny Murray, who has claimed the BBC banned her from discussing transgender issues on Women's Hour after she argued in 2017 that men who transition cannot be real women. She says the stance triggered years of threats from activists, leaving her fearful for her safety, but insists she has no regrets about championing women's rights. So, do you think, Tavi, that... Do you ever listen to Women's Hour at all?
I don't listen to Women's Hour, but I'm not really surprised that the BBC is unclear on their definition of a woman, seeing as they lie quite a lot, so it's not very surprising.
No, exactly. But I think the thing is, if they had said something earlier, and certainly on a show, on a flagship show like Women's Hour, and they had sort of talked about this from the beginning, 2017 seems like a very long time ago, then things might have turned out a little bit differently, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's bizarre. I mean, it's BBC Women's Hour. Yes,
BBC Women's and people who think they're Women's Hour. So, Jonathan, as someone with the hands of a woman...
I would literally made that joke.
Exactly what that's I'm sorry. But yeah, this is sort of tragic. I mean, this is really the problem. This is what we've seen over the last decade. This is why GB News exists, arguably, because other media organisations failed to tell the truth, to talk about what people on the street were talking about.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, normally I'm not a fan of listening to women. But what I do think here is that we're seeing a pattern of it. Things like death threats, you know, trying to get you cancelled, attacking your family, all that stuff. That's completely despicable. And I think it really goes against the principles of free debate and stuff like that. And it does seem to be coming from one side, which is meant to be the compassionate side, yet you're seeing all these horrible actions, which are really quite frightening. And it's happened to people I know. And I think it must stop.
Well, it must stop. Now, obviously, Steve, you've been on this channel for really since the beginning, 4 years or so. You probably just really hope that you get banned from talking about trans issues.
Yeah, just to have 1 week off, it would be so nice, yeah. I mean, it's a big question. Does Woman Hour know what women are? Do they know what an hour is? Because 5 minutes of that is a news bulletin, so they're lying twice. That's what bothers me. I've never listened to Women's Hour because I presume it's not for me, like Yorkies aren't for girls.
No, I listen to Women's Hour. I mean, it can be interesting and it has good interviews on it. But when you have someone like Helen Joyce who brings out a book, Trans, and they never interviewed her, and it was arguably at the peak of all of this, and they never invited her on at the time. She has been on since, I would argue, slightly hostile interview, but it seems like they failed to do their job.
Yeah. I also think there's probably a sense of fear that they didn't really know what to do. I mean, if your host is getting death threats, maybe there's a question about, oh, should we just not try and talk about this? They should have provided her with security and stuff like that, which didn't happen. I think that's also a failing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we're going to go on to our next question now, who is from... Who's it from? Melvin. Where is he? There he is, sorry.
Good evening, good evening. Can overhearing sexism make you a victim of sexual harassment?
Yeah, this is a very interesting case. Can overhearing... So I have to sort of repeat this because this is slightly complicated. Can overhearing sexism make you a victim of sexual harassment? So a new legal case raises the question of whether simply overhearing sexist remarks in the workplace could qualify as sexual harassment. Lawyers argue that such comments, even if not directed at an individual, may still create a hostile environment and harm those that are exposed to them. So, I don't know if you've heard about this case. This is the man, by the way, who overheard some of his colleagues, I believe, in a car showroom, making some sexist comments, and then he's now won this case that he's the victim of sexual harassment, which I mean, when you think about real victims of sexual harassment, that seems... and how unreported it goes as well.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, he might have a good idea for him. If he's got very good eyesight and he can lip read, he could make a fortune.
But also, well, this is it. I mean, Steve, this goes back to what we've really talked about for a long time, is this is taking offence even when you're not part of the conversation.
Oh, yeah, it's a genius move, really. It's main character syndrome, isn't it? It's not about you, mate, and yet you've made it all about you.
Yeah.
So the idea that as a bloke, if you overhear someone being sexist towards women, that you're the victim and you can sue, means that, I don't know if you remember, I used to do a TV show here with Louis Schaefer. I can sue for so many instances. That's my pension sorted. I've got to be rolling in it. It's great.
Well, this is it. I mean, Jonathan, you just said something terrible. I think the whole of the audience can sue you now.
But mine wasn't a joke, I meant it. So basically, what I'm really hoping is that this guy is just a huge con man, a grifter out for a payday, and not actually the biggest wuss in the world, because he's so pathetic if he was genuinely upset by someone else talking about someone he didn't know, that he had to then sue for that. I mean, one of the things that was said was that a woman was a little rough around the edges. Now, I've said that about my partner, but then she started waxing, so I've not had to say that anymore. So, honestly, I just think it's a different world.
He probably is a con man. He's a car salesman, so there's a strong chance. Strong chance.
Fair enough. Right, our next question's from Mike.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, Mike.
Has the Royal Yachting Association gone overboard?
Oh, very good. Yes, so the Royal Yachting Association going overboard. The Royal Yachting Association has declared that the phrase "man overboard" is considered offensive and should be replaced outside of emergency situations with more inclusive terms like "person in water." They also recommend avoiding words such as seamanship and sportsmanship, favouring gender-neutral alternatives to better honour women and non-binary individuals in the sport. Now, you've got a couple of yachts.
Just one now.
Just the one.
Yeah.
No, tough times.
Bigger than the other two.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that we still get these stories years later where these organisations, they'll pay for someone to go off and write these reports for them, and it just scuppers
It's almost like some associations are catching up when things have gone way past that.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's bizarre to hear these. In another year or so, it's going to be like out in the wild. You're going to get these kind of stories. Are you offended by sort of seamanship or
that one? I'm offended by, yeah, because that's, I mean, not for the reason they're thinking, but no, actually, the people who should be offended by this is men. Because the idea that you only need the phrase "man overboard" because we're the only idiots who might lean over too far just presumes that women are... I mean, they do have a lower centre of gravity, so maybe so. But I love the idea that there's someone who falls in, you hear a splash, you hear a helpful voice go, "Man overboard!" and the voice shouts from down there like, "How dare you! I will not be rescued until you call me Ms."
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I will not be...
Well, this is it. The crazy thing here is that to say "women overboard," a woman overboard still takes a shorter amount of time than "person in water."
Yeah.
That's...
Time is of the essence.
So this is for non-binary people,
of course,
essentially.
I mean,
person in water.
It's so, like, you know, it's counterintuitive. It's policing the language. I'm really sick of that stuff. And some of the words you have to replace things with, like seamanship, is now jizz boat, which I just don't think is good at all. I think that's a horrible word. Shouldn't be
There's
used.
also grinder. Are you familiar with, in yachting, the term grinder?
No, what? Is that what you...
That's been replaced by hinge. Little joke. So, our final question for the moment is from Gavan.
Yeah, good evening. Why?
Gavan, I love that intro. You're right, mate. Right, Gavan. How you doing, mate? Just come from the mark.
Right. Why are left-wing people encouraging environment to collapse?
Yeah, absolutely. Why are left-wing people encouraging environmental collapse? Tesla have just scrapped plans for a flagship London showroom after a slump in UK sales and mounting political backlash against Elon Musk, raising fresh debate over whether opposition from the left is undermining green innovation. So, Gavan, what do you think about this? Do you think that Elon Musk, he's said what he believes and he's been punished in his wallet? I mean, he's only got a couple of $100 billion left.
I'm crying for Elon Musk right now. You know, it's going to be just a few quid out of pocket. You know, but my thoughts about this, all this with the environment, and we're being lied about these electric cars. How clean are they? Because I don't think they are that clean anyway at the end of the day. Yeah. Because, you know, they've got bigger...
Well, if you've been to McDonald's and you've left the wrappers in and...
Yeah. But, you know, they've got bigger brakes, they've got bigger tyres and the batteries to, you know...
OK, I'm going to ask Elon Musk to give you a job. But there is something hypocritical here. Of course, Elon Musk was sort of the darling of the left because he'd, created this vehicle that was going to save the environment. And now you have the left or far left sort of banging them up and seeing him as a hate figure.
Well, that's the thing. You can never be pure enough for the extreme left. You have to not only contribute more to electric vehicles than probably anyone else throughout history. You also have to have exactly the right thoughts. You can't have any political opinions that go against them. But, I kind of actually agree with these guys, and in solidarity with these environmentalists, I have actually bought a 1973 Range Rover with a 6-litre engine, and I'm driving it around everywhere I go.
Good. Well, I'd like to put it, if there happens to be any far-left people watching this who own a Tesla, I'll take it off your hands.
Freak out.
Yeah, absolutely. Next on Free Speech Nation, the BBC are being pressured to pull out of the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest if Israel participates. Can you take a guess which political party is making the demand? Find out after the break. See you in 2 minutes.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, if you're heading off to the Mediterranean, then there's plenty of dry, sunny and very warm weather on offer over the next few days. There may well be a few showers just moving into the far north of Portugal and the far north of Spain on Monday, but most of Iberia, dry, sunny and very warm, if not hot. The same across Italy, most of Greece, the Balkans and Turkey. Just 1 or 2 afternoon thunderstorms here and there. And the outlook is for it to stay pretty settled, dry and sunny for the vast majority and very warm indeed.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, low pressure dominates, bringing wet and windy conditions. We have a Met Office yellow wind warning in force for England and Wales this evening and overnight and into Monday. So low pressure dominates, moving its way eastwards through Sunday night and into Monday with some strong winds, so 60 to 70 miles per hour along the exposed coasts. The band of rain will continue to push its way through, mainly affecting northern parts of Scotland, clearer skies towards the south and east, but behind that, blustery showers across Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest, but a milder start to Monday compared to Sunday. So like I said, we still have that wind warning in force across England and Wales, but for Scotland, it's a damp start across the north. Lighter winds here though, and then across Northern Ireland to start Monday morning, showery, especially across northern parts of England as well, where it could be heavy at times. Best of the brightness really focused across East Anglia, the Midlands and the southeast to start the day. But inland, 45 to 55 miles per hour is possible across England and Wales, so take care, especially during rush hour. Otherwise, showers affecting Northern Ireland and merging to give longer spells of rain across Northern England, Northern Wales as well. Towards the south of that, some sunny breaks, but also blustery showers that will rattle through pretty quickly, highs of up to 18 or 19 degrees. To start Tuesday then, it's actually a much brighter start out there. The low pressure will shift its way eastwards, so we'll start to see lighter winds. There'll be a few showers around, mainly across a northern part of England. Bright skies towards the southeast before sunshine turns hazy later, and then we see the return of more wet and windy weather on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Now, the UK's Green parties have made a rare joint appeal to the BBC, stating that they will withdraw from the 2026 Eurovision if Israel's state broadcaster is allowed to participate. They condemn Israel's assault on Gaza, and several European broadcasters have made participation conditional. Ireland's RTE and Slovenia's RTV SLO will only take part if Israel does not, while Spain is considering the same. The Greens warn Eurovision, meant to celebrate peace and unity, that they cannot exist with complicity in a supposed genocide. So joining me now to discuss this is columnist and broadcaster Wallis Simons. Jake, welcome to the show. Jake, this is something that we've seen really over the last couple of years from October 7th. It's just this gradual erasure of Jews from public life.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me as if it's a replay of a very familiar experience for Jews, which is that you go to a country, you bed in, you assimilate as best you can, you put down roots, you feel there's some anti-Semitism, but you feel kind of safe, and then suddenly the country turns on you, or, you know, the people around you turn on you, and you're forced out. And we see that happening to Israel. It managed to form a normal country, be accepted by the community of nations, have a seat at the table. And since October the 7th, it feels like the world has gradually turned its back on Israel. And the thing that I want to see, I can't believe we're not seeing, is where are the countries saying, if Israel's forced out, we're not participating? Where's the backbone? At least one country, at least Britain, surely would be able to say that. The role that we played in establishing Israel, we've always been a friend of Israel since the very beginning. Surely us, surely 2, 3, 4 other countries would be able to say, look, if you're going to bring anti-Semitism into this, we're out as well.
I mean, the home of Bucks Fizz. This is where the stand should be taken. Now, of course, some people will argue it's not anti-Semitism at all. This is just being against Israel, or what they see as Israel's what's going on in Gaza. But it's not just something like Eurovision. It's also happening even in places like Hollywood, which was created by Jews. And now you have these famous actors, I think 4,000 people so far, signing a letter. They'll no longer work with any Israelis. And as has been pointed out to them, that it's in the arts, and particularly in Israel, where peace can be made.
Yeah. But, I mean, the weird thing is, though, that, of course, you can have reservations about Israel's strategy and all that sort of thing, fine. But take a step back, and we're talking about a liberal democracy on the one hand, like us, like the Americans. We and the Americans went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, need I remind everybody. And then you've got the other side, which is a load of jihadis, who would behead all of us in this room and everyone sitting at home if they could. And yet the West is taking the side of the jihadis, not the liberal democracy that shares our values. And it strikes me that in this way, the West is not just betraying the Jews, it's betraying itself. And that happens to be the subtitle of my new book.
What a coincidence!
You see how I did
Hello.
that? Called Never Again, which I brought to give you, Josh.
Oh, my gosh. OK, brilliant. Thank you so much.
The first copy's arrived yesterday.
So and you've inscribed it.
And I've written.
Josh, I based my entire look on you. Wow.
Brother from another mother.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you very much. I look forward to putting that on eBay. No, joke. No, I was going to buy this, so I've now got it. Thank you. Well, this is really exactly it, and it's unfortunate that October 7th brought this to light. Other people would argue, that actually when you say it's the West who are betraying Jews, it seems to be the leadership of some of these countries, because even you go back to Eurovision, the public vote seemed very much to come out in support of Israel. So I would argue that the silent majority out there can see what's going on, can see how our leaders are really betraying us, betraying the ideologies by which we live by in the West, for votes.
Exactly right, and that's actually the argument I make in this book, which is that the problem is that we've been dominated by elites since the Second World War, certainly since the Cold War, who've prevented us from speaking our mind and being proud of our country, proud of our flag, insisting on our borders, and, you know, generous to outsiders, but knowing who we are. They've tried to get rid of that, and part of that project has been to prevent people from standing up with Israel, because Israel knows who it is. It represents our older values of fighting for itself, of knowing its culture, of being proud of itself, and somehow the two things have got tamped down together. And so I think that at the moment, last year, what we saw with Eurovision was, you know, the leaders, the elites, trying to give Israel nil point, eject it from the competition and so on, but the population giving it a lot of support. I think that really reflects how people feel today as well. A lot of people in this country and across the West just think, you know what, it's obvious. Israel, whatever the rights and wrongs of how it does things in Gaza, look, it's a liberal democracy doing its best against a load of jihadis that are trying to get it to kill civilians. Let's just give our support to the country that supports our values. And it's showing that showed itself last year in the public vote. I think it will show itself this year in the same way if Israel is allowed to participate.
Yeah, last week there was a march against anti-Semitism in London, and many of the people there weren't Jewish. They have been people who've come out and gone to counter-protests against these supposed peace marches. So there is this kind of groundswell out there of people who... And it's interesting, and it's always been, you know, this idea of Jews being the canary in the coal mine, but people are recognising that and have come out and stood with Jews, which I find personally quite... comforting.
Yeah. I mean, over the last couple of years, this idea of the silent majority, initially, after October the 7th, I was writing in The Telegraph, appealing for the silent majority to become unsilenced, to raise its voice, to stand up, not just for Jews, but for ourselves, you know, for what we all believe in. And then I went through a period where I thought, you know what, the silent majority actually is no longer the majority. It's shrinking, it's shrunk to become the minority. But now I'm feeling more upbeat about it because I think that the polls, yes, they show very, very small support for Israel, but people lie to the polls because they feel embarrassed to say what they really think. Some people have repressed their feelings so much they don't even know what they really think. And all you've got to do is get them in a place where it's OK to say you support a liberal democracy defending itself against jihadis. It's OK to say that. And suddenly I think people will be released from those shackles of being told that what they really believe deep down is taboo and be able to raise their voices. So I think that what we need to do, and again I argue in the book, is that you need to start speaking up. You know, there's this thing I call change entrepreneurs. Be an entrepreneur with changing the mentality of the people around you. Raise your voice. Say, look, it's OK to say that you believe in supporting liberal democracy against jihadis. It's OK to say that. And let's all try and persuade each other to raise our voices together and create a change in this country.
Absolutely. Well, bravery speaks to bravery. So.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I genuinely look forward to reading it. Thank you so much for joining us, Jake Wallis Simons. Next on Free Speech Nation, it was revealed yesterday that the suspected gunman who assassinated Charlie Kirk has a trans partner. This follows the news that strange slogans were engraved on the ammunition pointing towards the suspect's political ideology. But what is the significance of all of this as we approach the end of woke? The one and only Andrew Doyle will join us in a couple of minutes. See you then. Thank you.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth. Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Now, yesterday brought fresh revelations on Charlie Kirk's murder. Investigators say his partner's text messages helped the FBI close in. This comes after the news that Robinson's bullets were engraved with strange slogans. One read, "Hey, fascist, catch." Basically, everyone in America is the different political sides are accusing each other of being the reason why this person committed this horrible crime. But as we approach what many say is the end of woke, someone's even written a book about it, what impact does Charlie Kirk's murder have on this direction of travel? I'm joined now by the comedian and writer and the creator of this show, Andrew Doyle.
Hi, Josh. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. A bit depressed about what's been happening recently, but otherwise well.
Yeah, it's been a shocking week. I wonder in America if it must be even more seismic over there, but I don't know if people really appreciated how much of an impact Charlie Kirk has.
It's been really huge. I think even for people who weren't overly familiar with what he did, because this was a man who went to college campuses with the express aim of listening to other people's points of view. He made an effort to platform people who fundamentally disagreed with him, and he heard them out, and he was respectful. And he was very strident in his points of view. He was very robust. But his whole point was, we have to have a discussion. We live in a liberal democracy. We have to have freedom of speech. So this feels not simply like an attack on one individual. It feels like an attack on the very concept of freedom of speech itself. I think that's why it's hit home and why I felt very shocked about this in particular, because he wasn't a politician. He didn't have political clout. This is someone who had political opinions and very strident political opinions, but it wasn't the same as when we've seen other examples of political violence. And of course, political violence happens every now and then. It's horrific. It should never happen. The phrase political violence should be considered an oxymoron, but it does happen. But with someone like Charlie Kirk, who all he was doing was wanting to have discussion, for someone like that to be murdered in cold blood, it has a particularly chilling effect, not just in terms of the human cost, but it makes people nervous, I think, about wanting to put their opinions out there when they see that this can be the consequence.
Well, that's the purpose of terrorism.
Quite. Exactly. And I should say, I mean, you mentioned that all factions are blaming the other. I think at this stage, we do have to reiterate the point, the person to blame for Charlie Kirk's murder is the murderer. Like, ultimately, we can talk about the degradation of the discourse and the various things that have been said that people believe prompted this person to act. But I don't want to let him off the hook. Ultimately, it's he is responsible. He is the killer. He is the person who has perpetuated this evil. This is an act of evil. There's no getting around that. But it does lead to questions about why are we raising the temperature? Now, we know from research that people don't just react to things they hear online and go out mechanically and commit evil acts. But what we also know is that when you call people fascists who aren't fascists, when you call people, and I'm talking about the mainstream media here, I'm talking about mainstream politicians, when they throw that word around, when they throw a word like Nazi around to people to whom it does not apply, that raises the temperature. What it does is it creates a culture within which a psychopath who might act in this way will feel that he has a kind of imprimatur of approval from above to do so. So I think we have to firstly blame only the killer for his actions. He's the only one to blame. But We have to also say that people in the media and politics have a responsibility to use words with care, particularly incendiary words like fascist and Nazi, and to remember what it actually means. Because, as you know, anyone who has a mild, slight political disagreement is just called a fascist. What does that mean? It's like they don't know what it actually means.
Yeah, well, they just want to label you, and to see, I guess in this case, we saw people celebrating his death. But as you say, politicians, journalists, cultural commentators, you'd think they'd know better. But what was interesting, I thought, one of the most interesting things in the reaction is these people who didn't really know who he was, I'm talking really about Alistair Campbell or Stephen King, kind of formulating their ideas online and coming out very strongly, like, this is what I think about Charlie Kirk, this is what he said. And you realise that, of course, they took a snippet, they took things that were out of context, and they instantly came out and they said, this is what he was like. He was a white nationalist, he was a Nazi.
Exactly. So, that's called confirmation bias, because there's been this habit among political ideologues to demonize, not just to disagree, but to think that anyone who disagrees with them must be evil, not just wrong, but evil. And so therefore they'll see any snippet online and it will feed into their existing confirmation bias about someone. You mentioned Alistair Campbell, Stephen King, the novelist, did the same thing. Very specifically, they had seen a clip of Charlie Kirk talking about the Bible's view of homosexuality. And they claimed that he had said that gay people should be stoned to death. He categorically did not say that, and he did not believe that either. What he was actually doing in that clip is he was responding to an online influencer who had wished people Happy Pride Month by quoting lines from the Bible. And his point was that if you just quote from the same book of the Bible, you can find a quote that says that gay people should be stoned to death. He was making a point about cherry picking from Scripture. He was not in any way endorsing the stoning of gay people. In fact, he stood up for gay people's right to live the life they want to live and to be in the Conservative Party. He didn't approve of gay people's lifestyle, but he did not want to make choices on their behalf or punish them for being who they were. And I think that's the key difference between Charlie Kirk and his critics. He had very strong views on all sorts of things. I would have disagreed with him on an awful lot. But he wanted everyone to have the right to express their views and to disagree, and he did not believe that people who disagreed with him should be shut up by censorship, force, or violence. That's the key difference between Charlie Kirk and his critics, because a lot of his critics seem to think, as we've seen from the people grotesquely celebrating this murder, that they think it's perfectly acceptable to commit acts of violence against those who disagree. That's a huge problem. And as I say, it's not just the far left and the far right. We know that those groups support violence against their opponents. We know that those groups aren't for freedom. I'm talking about when these ideas go into the mainstream left and the mainstream right. And it has to be said, there is more of a problem in the mainstream left with this normalization of violence and the misuse of terms like fascism and Nazism. So I think the mainstream left has to get its act into order. It has to get its own house in order when it comes to this thing.
Well, I think they've been exposed this week, unfortunately. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew Doyle.
Thank you.
That is the end of the first hour of Free Speech Nation. Don't go away, because there's lots more to come, including a debate on cancel culture following Charlie Kirk's murder. And journalist Helen Joyce will be telling us about the trans activists weaponising our justice system. Plus, Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union reveals all about the bizarre threat from the University of Leeds following her interview with Graham Linehan. You don't want to miss this. See you in 2 minutes.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, low pressure dominates, bringing wet and windy conditions. We have a Met Office yellow wind warning in force for England and Wales this evening and overnight and into Monday. So low pressure dominates, moving its way eastwards through Sunday night and into Monday with some strong winds, so 60 to 70 miles per hour along the exposed coasts. The band of rain will continue to push its way through, mainly affecting northern parts of Scotland, clearer skies towards the south and east, but behind that, blustery showers across Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest, but a milder start to Monday compared to Sunday. So like I said, we still have that wind warning in force across England and Wales, but for Scotland, it's a damp start across the north. Lighter winds here though, and then across Northern Ireland to start Monday morning, showery, especially across northern parts of England as well, where it could be heavy at times. Best of the brightness really focused across East Anglia, the Midlands and the southeast to start the day. But inland, 45 to 55 miles per hour is possible across England and Wales, so take care, especially during rush hour. Otherwise, showers affecting Northern Ireland and merging to give longer spells of rain across Northern England, Northern Wales as well. Towards the south of that, some sunny breaks, but also blustery showers that will rattle through pretty quickly, highs of up to 18 or 19 degrees. To start Tuesday then, it's actually a much brighter start out there. The low pressure will shift its way eastwards, so we'll start to see lighter winds. There'll be a few showers around, mainly across a northern part of England. Bright skies towards the southeast before sunshine turns hazy later, and then we see the return of more wet and windy weather on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including...
I'm sorry, our two countries are the two least racist countries ever to exist in the history of the world, and
We'll be debating whether people should lose their jobs for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, or is this cancel culture on the other foot? Also, journalist Helen Joyce will be joining me as she talks about trans activists weaponising the justice system in the latest on the Graham Linehan arrest saga after my interview with the father, Ted Creator. Let's just say Graham is far from the only person who has been affected. And Free Speech Union's Connie Shaw finally reveals the full truth behind her cancellation at Leeds University. And we've got our comedians answering more cultural conundrums from our live studio audience. But first, the news with Bethany Elsey.
Good evening, I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The former world boxing champion Ricky Hatton has been found dead at his home in Greater Manchester. He was 46. Police say they're not treating his death as suspicious. Hatton won world titles at light welterweight and welterweight, but it was also his down-to-earth personality that made him one of the most popular British boxers. Hitman, as he was known throughout his career, had a number of iconic fights against Costa Zoo, Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. After retiring, he'd spoken openly about his struggles with mental health and drug addiction. He was due to make a comeback in December. The Prime Minister has condemned the violence during yesterday's rally in central London, saying he will not stand for assaults on police. 26 officers were injured and 24 arrests at the Unite, the Kingdom March organised by Tommy Robinson, which saw around 150,000 people take part. Sir Keir Starmer said peaceful protest is core to British values, but added that we will never surrender our flag to those who use it as a symbol of division. Around 5,000 people also attended a counter-protest organised by Stand Up to Racism. The Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has accused the Prime Minister of lying to Parliament over what he knew and when over Peter Mandelson's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. It's emerged Sir Keir Starmer was given a report detailing the peer's relationship with the convicted paedophile before Lord Mandelson was named ambassador to the US. But Downing Street says he was economical with the truth before his appointment. Peter Mandelson was sacked on Thursday after damning emails he sent to Epstein were published. Donald Trump's top diplomat has reissued his concern over Israel's attack on Hamas inside Qatar as he starts a two-day visit to the Middle East. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio prayed at the Western Wall in Jerusalem alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Rubio said the US president was not happy with the strike on Qatar, which killed 5 members of Hamas, but that it will not change the alliance between the two countries. 2 people have been arrested following the death of a 2-year-old girl in Teesside, which police have described as unexplained. Cleveland police were called to Hartington Close in Thornaby following concerns over the child's welfare. She died after being taken to hospital. A 25-year-old woman and a 21-year-old man are being questioned. And Prince Harry has defended his decision to speak out against his family, saying his conscience is clear. The Duke of Sussex spoke to The Guardian while visiting Ukraine's capital after meeting with the King earlier this week. He told the paper that he's happy with his life, but hinted that a return to the UK could be on the cards. You're up to date. I'll have more for you in an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Joining me again and my comedian guests, Jonathan Cogan and Stephen N. Allen. We're going to go straight to some more questions from our audience. And our first question is from Sean.
What would James Joyce think of cancel culture in his name?
Yeah, what would James Joyce make of cancel culture in his name? University College Dublin has withdrawn the James Joyce Award from Boy in the Striped Pyjamas author John Boyne over his support for J.K. Rowling's views on transgender issues, sparking debate about cancel culture in Joyce's name. So, are you familiar with this story? Are you familiar with this award?
Well, I know the awards because I've had association with UCD before and Trinity College. But the fact that they've cancelled it, and for this particular author, I can't understand it, to be honest with you. It's totally woke, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Steve, they gave him the award, or they emailed him and they said, hey, you've got this award because you've written a book that's all about homophobia and how people are brave. And then next day it all kicked off with another award ceremony, or he was put on the long list for award, and lots of trans activists kind of said, "How dare you do this?" And now the original award said,
yeah. Wasn't it even worse that they actually said it was for his ability to address difficult issues? That's why he would have got the award, but oh no, he's addressed the wrong difficult issue, so now he's not allowed the award. Look, I mean, I don't think they should do this, but every time we talk about awards, I'll say the same thing. It's pointless anyway. Awards are basically people who manage to achieve their dream job and then still want a pat on the back for it. So it's showing how utterly pointless the award system is.
What do you think? Do you think awards are...
Well, as an award-winning ham model, I actually think awards are very valuable, and
there is no way the awards... there's no way you get, like,
I wasn't expecting this. Oh, God, wait, is that one for me?
I'm not that bothered about awards myself. Means nothing to me.
That says best bum.
Yeah, okay.
Take this a noun or a verb?
Take this home. Anyway, all right, well, look, let's go on to our next question, which is from Anton.
Are prisons going to have to open new grey wards?
Yes, our prisons are going to have to open a new grey wing. So thousands of mostly older protesters are defying the terror ban on Palestine action, flooding the streets with placards and overwhelming police with mass arrests. This growing grey army is testing the system to breaking point, supposedly, sparking the question, will prisons need a new grey wing? So this is kind of a deliberate action. Palestine action, they've deliberately done this. They're saying to people, we're going to kind of break the system here. If enough of us do this, and at the moment I believe it's about 1,000 people, then the idea is that the government will withdraw its sanctioning of the...
Yeah, or at least the courts wouldn't be able to process it, which I believe, I mean, 3 people might be enough to push our court system over the edge at the moment, so 1,000's probably enough to do it. The thing on this, right, I suppose we don't really know all the details of whether the Palestine action should have been marked as a terrorist. Well, Yvette Cooper said she had information that she couldn't tell us.
Yeah.
So if I believe her, then fair enough, say that they're a terrorist group, but... people on the street holding up the placards presumably don't know the information that Yvette Cooper's not told us. So should they be arrested? So I think you can make an argument that the group should have been classified as a terrorist organisation, but the people shouldn't be arrested. But also, the people getting arrested is the absolute own goal. That's why, when you see some lovely old granny getting arrested, it's not going to look good. So I would have not done the arrests. And it's not as if the police have to arrest for every crime. They avoid many of them. I think if you do a bit of shoplifting, they don't turn up, so they could avoid doing this on over a placard.
Of course, you're going to have accusations of two-tier policing. We've got people sent to jail over posts. The fact is, it's against the law to support a terrorist organisation. So there are 2 different arguments here. I think one is, should they have been prescribed? And the other is, they have been prescribed, thus showing support for them is breaking the law. And I just want to also point out, as I don't ask you a question, but just speak at you, Jonathan.
I bet you.
Is that you can support the Palestinian people. And, they go, oh, no, I'm being shut down from supporting... No, this is different. They are supporting specifically a prescribed group. That's illegal, right?
Yes, no, it is illegal, and whether or not that was the right decision, the police have to carry out these things consistently. You can't favour one group over another. But one of my big worries is that if you do end up having all these OAPs, these elderly people in hospital, a lot of them have bad backs. So when they drop the soap, it's going to be... picking it up could be a bit of one of those things.
This will be interesting. I think the first 3 cases are going to court, or they might be on Monday. So we are going to see what kind of punishments they're going to get. What is quite amusing about all of this is that it's not that they're going to get jail time, but what the police said is, don't do it because it might affect your career. This is people in their 80s.
And there is a chance they get a sentence of like 3 weeks or life, whichever's shorter. You never know.
It's better than paying the heating bills.
Fair enough. Right, our next question is from Mark.
Yes, good evening. We've all seen the rise of Sharia law over the last few years. Is this the time for the end of the Texas Sharia lawman?
Yeah, the Texas Sharia lawman. That's my favourite TV show. So Texas has slammed the brakes on so-called Sharia compounds, banning Muslim patrols and sparking a political firestorm. Now critics, of course, are calling it blatant Islamophobia. So are you familiar with the story? Have you seen the footage? There's a Muslim cleric, I believe he's going into different shops in Texas and saying, we're going to boycott you if you sell product like pork products or alcohol.
No, I haven't actually seen that.
Well, let me get my phone out and show you.
with Sharia law, it's the same as any other religious law, I think. As long as they obey the laws of the land they're in, and they're supportive of the other religions and beliefs that are around them.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of furore, shall we say, about Sharia law in the UK and how there are 80 courts in the UK. A lot the people who sort of support them say, well, it's for divorces mostly, as long as it doesn't supersede the laws of the land.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Well, as long as also women are being respected by it, which is the stickier end of the...
Well, this is it. They're saying that they're being sort of coerced within these courts.
So that's more of a worry. I think the idea of going into a shop and saying, don't sell this, otherwise we'll boycott you, you could have called it like a secret shopper, and that seems less threatening, doesn't it? I mean, boycott a shop if you want to. It's not I can't make it illegal for you to boycott a shop if you don't like what they're selling. But effectively, it's a bit of a protection racket, isn't it? Saying, sell what we want, otherwise we will end your business. So I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure I agree with it, but it's not illegal.
People would say this is the Islamification of wider culture. There's one thing you go, oh, I don't eat pork. Fine. To stop shops from selling pork, that's the problem that we're kind of dealing with, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a very heavy-handed way to encroach on the freedoms of individuals, which is completely unacceptable. I think if you're going to have a cohesive society, you can't have pockets within that society who live by a completely different set of laws. Customs, yes, language, whatever, but when there's actually the legality behind things, that is fundamentally in conflict with the people. This isn't very funny.
But isn't there an overlap issue here as well, though?
I'm just waiting for you to say something incredibly bigoted.
Yeah. But effectively, this guy's going in there and saying, you sell pork, stop selling it, otherwise we will boycott you. How much pork do you buy? Not a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
So you probably won't even notice the
difference. Also, don't go to one of those Texas BBQ places, because that's going to be quite a hard sell.
Yeah, it might be that he might not even be Muslim. He might just be wanting some free pork.
Yeah.
It's like, stop selling pork, give me all your pork. We'll see. Our final question is from Dav.
Evening, panel. My question is, how much money would you pay for your children to be taught tolerance of other people's ideas?
Yes, thank you, Dav. So, how much would you pay for your kids to be taught tolerance of other people's ideas? This is Wellington College. They're cracking down on cancel culture by appointing a new chair of compassion to teach pupils how to disagree without it kicking off. Parents are paying top fees to make sure their kids learn tolerance in an age of Andrew Tate and online outrage. Dev, do you have kids?
Yeah. Well, mine are adults, but...
I'm imagining you taught your children tolerance, right?
Of course, yeah. I was a teacher for 30 years as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
But you'd have thought it was a normal part of Western liberal education to accept other people's opinions in contrast to your own. So it's a shame that we need this, but obviously we do.
Yeah.
We needed to go to colleges and universities as well, I would have thought.
Well, this is it, and thank you, Dave, because part of the reason is that we still don't have the guidelines within the state schools. This is a private school, so they can implement something like this. Did you think there was something contradictory within its messaging where it was like, we're all about showing people how to accept different ideas, but Andrew Tate's evil?
Oh, yeah, the whole article was like, this is all about compassion because we want to make sure everyone hates Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I was reading the story the first time, when it said chair of compassion, I thought it was a chair that you'd be sent to. Like, go and sit in the chair of compassion until you decide to be nice to people.
The table of sympathy.
Yeah,
it's what they call the electric chair in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. Will teachers necessarily deliver it well? I don't know.
Well, what do you think? I mean, you don't have kids, but do you think that you have parents... did they teach you?
I try and teach them... Well, my parents are sort of like... One would be very kind of liberal and kind of teach me how more critical thinking, and the other would just hit me at random intervals. So I was always kind of kept on my toes. So but the only way I could actually stop being spanked by my parents was to pretend I enjoyed it, which was, if you ever want to win psychological warfare against your parents, whenever they start spanking, you just start moaning with pleasure. And if you're not too young, if you can like muster up an erection at the same time, they don't know what to deal with. What's the question, sir?
Anyway, well, I don't know.
Useful advice for everyone, that.
You are aware that I'm trying to host a TV show. But they've got lessons on consent.
Yeah.
I feel in two minds about this, because as a parent myself, I feel like parents, of course, this is exactly what parents should be doing, but for the parent, it's the parents who are failing to do that the schools would have to step in and teach this stuff. And frankly, I think that this needs to be just drummed into children, just about respecting different other sexes, respecting consent, and because something's being lost somewhere.
My question, sorry, I was going to say, my question would be, can you actually teach that, though, or is that something you gather through experience?
I think you can teach. You can teach people morals. You should teach people how to behave, how to treat people, how boys should treat girls, and...
True, although I think a lot of it is also through socialising as well. Like, if you have built up a friendship group and stuff like that, a lot of that comes from everyday experience and, interacting and being reciprocal with people.
My question was going to be, can you opt out of the lessons on consent? Because if you can't, then you don't give your consent, but they do it anyway. That's the wrong lesson.
Fair enough. Well, £62,000 well spent there. Next on Free Speech Nation, we'll be debating whether people should lose their jobs for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, or is this cancel culture on the other foot? See you in 2 minutes.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Now, a mountain of TikTok videos and ex-posts have celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Do you remember this guy?
I want to dedicate this next one to an absolute piece of shit of a human being. The pronouns was, were.
disgusting. Well, a lot of people have rightly been furious at these vile reactions, and some have even called for those celebrating or mocking Charlie Kirk's death to face cancellation. A music venue has recently cancelled rap punk group Bob Vylan. That's who we saw after the statement that they made on stage in that video. Now, George Abarionye, the Oxford Union's incoming president-elect, is under fire for online comments he made about Charlie Kirk that was seen to be mocking his death, and now faces demands to be ousted before he has even taken office. But should people lose their jobs over expressing such things, or is this cancel culture on the other foot? Joining me to debate this is the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, and the member of the campaigning group Fair Cop, Sarah Phillimore. Welcome to the show, both of you. Thank you. I've got to be honest, this has been a tricky debate for me. Sarah, you've been posting about this online, and I've thought one thing, and then I'll read what you say, and it sort of changes my mind. What is your position?
The people have got to go back to the law. I'm a big fan of the rule of law. We're governed by Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. It comes in two parts, 1 and 2. It is not an absolute right. It can't be an absolute right.
Free speech.
Yes. So someone like me, a member of a regulated profession, I accept I am held to higher standards. If I'd gone and publicly stated my celebration of the murder of somebody, I would not expect to remain a regulated professional, because it comes with power, responsibility and privilege. And to celebrate the murder of somebody is not acceptable. If it's someone like Bob Vylan, it's disgusting, but I don't have to buy his music or go to his concerts. But someone who's going to be the president of the Oxford Union will carry that privilege and prestige around on his CV for the rest of his life. He cannot be allowed to have that position while celebrating the public execution of somebody that he was only recently debating. I think that very much falls within Article 10.2. Free speech has its limits, and he reached it.
What about you, Tom? Do you think those limits were breached?
Well, I think freedom of speech, when it comes to your rights as a citizen in the public realm, really the only limits are things like incitement, things like fraud, things like lying on your tax return, crimes that involve speech rather than speech crimes. Exactly. These are things that even in America there are lines drawn along those particular issues and those particular offences. I think when you get into the questions of independent organisations, members-based organisations and then employers, you're in a slightly different territory. I mean, you, Josh, couldn't go on social media tonight, slag off your employers and expect to have a job on Monday morning. Even the BBC, with the whole Gary Lineker situation, reposting that Instagram post with rats in it referencing Zionists, made us realise that even there's a level of anti-Semitism they won't put up with, which was a surprise for most of us. But at the same time, if we're talking about the Oxford Union, this is a members-based organisation. He was elected. There is a mechanism for the members to force a confidence vote in him. They just have to get 150 of them together to do so. And whilst I completely agree that, first of all, this repugnant little scrope doesn't deserve to, you know, he's not morally capable of looking after a hamster, let alone the most, you know, august debating union in the world. But at the same time, there would also be something perverse about him being forced out by the executive of that organisation, and certainly chucked out of the university, as some people have been calling for. And I think it's down to the members to decide his fate, and I hope that they do force that confidence vote and oust him for all the reasons that we've already talked about.
Do you think that there's a bit of hypocrisy where, you know, this show has really was started to point out these moments of cancel culture, and now this is someone on the left who is doing something that we see as heinous, that this is kind of like, oh, well, now that's fine, cancel culture, when it happens to them who I disagree with?
No, I don't think there's hypocrisy at all. I just think people are very bad at arguing. People are quite sometimes maliciously determined to weaponise situations to their own advantage. But to say that I am guilty of causing genocide because I say sex is real and it matters is a nonsense, and we have to be able to say it's a nonsense. And if you personally feel that, you need to get some help. You're delusional. But to publicly celebrate the execution of somebody who is doing nothing other than talk crosses a line which I don't think any civilised society can tolerate, and certainly shouldn't be rewarding that person with a continued position of power and prestige.
So if we take away this position of power and prestige and we just talk about some... Because I would argue that it really depends about what the job is. I don't know if you would agree with that. In terms of like a teacher, you know, there's been examples of teachers playing this footage to their students, to 10-year-olds, to celebrating it. For me, that person is unfit.
A big problem here is a lack of legal literacy. The law operates to a criminal standard and a civil standard. The criminal law should only interfere with speech in very, very limited circumstances. That is incitement to violence, targeted harassment. The civil law then steps in with defamation. And I think, as you mentioned, your employment contract or your position as a regulated professional then adds another layer. People have got to be clear about this. I'm not calling for him to be arrested. I'm not calling for him to be refused entry to the United States.
And what about being kicked out of Oxford?
No, I think that would be disproportionate. What I'm saying is, if you are going to take advantage of a position of power and prestige, that carries with it responsibilities. I am hearing that people are now refusing invitations from the current president to debate. So he's having a real impact on the union.
Well, this is it. I mean, it's particular, Tom, that this role that he has, he's there to celebrate debate and free speech. So surely that makes his position untenable, even if he didn't get these 150 votes to oust him?
No, I think it shows that he's unfit to do it. The question is who decides finally whether or not he should hold that position. I think particularly if you're in an organisation which has democratic mechanisms, then it should be up to that selectorate to decide. And I think the thing that we need to be conscious of here is that there is this specific case, there is the question of employment law, of course, but it's also obviously gone much broader than that. In the US, for instance, a lot of people on the right of politics, there was a Republican congressman the other day saying that now was the time for social media companies to introduce lifetime bans on anyone who had been seen to celebrate the murder of Charlie Kirk. There's also a lot of people who I think by any strict definition are just kind of civilians. There was a bloke who worked in like Home Depot in the US who had said something that he probably shouldn't have said to what I imagine was originally quite a small amount of people, but the way these things get screenshotted and shown to the world ends up losing his job. I think that there is a broader appetite amongst some sections, particularly the American right, although these things do wash over here to a certain extent inevitably, for kind of vengeance and retribution, and not just in the sense of political violence, although because no one would ever say that openly, but even when it comes to kind of tit-for-tat cancel culture at the edges, I just think it's only going to make the problem worse. And also I think kind of deepen that sense of that kind of the grim satisfaction a lot of these people are taking from being seen to transgress in this way. I think Bob Dylan is a great example. They've basically now made a career, a name for themselves out of trying to be as absolutely toxic and unpleasant as possible. And I think there is a danger that whilst they would probably be saying these things anyway, we give it that extra level of kind of transgression and make ourselves look like hypocrites if we start to engage in
Well, that's fair enough. But then, of course, the thing about Bob Dylan is that they were featured, given slots at Glastonbury, they were featured on our national broadcaster. And this is before they did, I don't know if you watched any of the original footage, but this is before they came out with these statements like death to the IDF. Do you think that the BBC has any culpability for putting them on?
It is difficult. That's why we need to talk about it. If it was criminal incitement, then absolutely the BBC should be culpable. I think that's where it starts to get difficult, saying, well, is that criminal incitement? I think it was originally reported he was saying, I'm killing Jewish people. I think that would have been an extra layer, but he said the IDF, so it didn't meet that threshold.
But that's unfortunately had the coding that these people have used.
I think for people like that, we have to let the marketplace decide. If people really aren't revolted by that, well, there's very little we can do. We can't put them all in prison. But what I'm saying, if Bob Dylan was standing to be elected as Member of Parliament, we would be entitled to say that he has made himself unfit for that office because he would need to represent all his constituents, including the Jewish ones. So I know this is a difficult debate because, as I alluded to, there are different layers. There's a criminal, there's a civil, there's your employment responsibilities. But we mustn't shy away from saying celebrating the public execution of somebody is abhorrent. It diminishes the person who does it. It diminishes us as a society if we allow it. And so I certainly think, I totally agree, there should be due process, but I very much hope that the vote of no confidence succeeds and the President-elect is ousted, because what he did was unacceptable, and his apology also. Oh, well, I was a bit insensitive, but I'm apologising. Well, Charlie Kirk is dead. He can't apologise. Not that I think he had anything to apologise for.
No, absolutely. Well, it's not just these people in these kind of like high-profile roles. It's a lot of people who've lost their... people who work in coffee shops, or their job doesn't matter about how vile their personal opinions are or whether they share them on social media. Right?
No, exactly. And we saw this after the attempted assassination of Trump as well. Just even people who are, say, complete civilians, they're just doing their jobs. They said something that was absolutely disgusting, but at the same time, it could have been easily in the heat of the moment. They're not public figures. They're not working in an area where they're caring for people or anything like that. That seems to me to be a step too far. I also think that there's an element of it becomes the thing about cancel culture, which is why it becomes quite tempting for people to engage in it, is that it creates a kind of fake sense of satisfaction. You're shutting up someone, or you're pushing something that you find disgusting to the edges. The issue is that whether it's...
Sorry, I agree with you, but do you think that I don't even want to say right, because I don't necessarily think it is the right, but do you think the people who've suffered cancel culture, do you think that they are as guilty of it in this case?
I don't know about as guilty, but there's certainly a rising appetite, shall we say, amongst some people who previously were making quite a big fuss about being free speech warriors. So inconsistency is always the challenge, but I hope people will meet it. I suppose the point I was wanting to make was that ultimately, people like this guy at Oxford are a kind of symptom of a broader moral sickness that we're experiencing, particularly when he's, 20-something years old. You know, we put kids through the education system, they're taught a load of horrendous garbage at school, they're taught a load of horrendous garbage at university, and then we're surprised when they talk a lot of horrendous garbage in public. And I think, as much as I think we should oppose any form of cancel culture because it just becomes a quite depressing tit for tat, it will also be a distraction from the much more kind of deeper conversations we need to have about how did we get ourselves into a position where someone is shot dead for something they say, and a not insubstantial amount of people crowd onto social media to celebrate it. And that, I think, was probably more where the discussion should be, rather than whether or not this person or that person should lose their job. I'd rather not see that. I'd rather see, as I say, a much kind of more pressing and important debate take place.
But do you think that something like having these lines in the sand as a society is that's what's going to allow us to actually stand up as the silent majority to go, this is not acceptable?
But we have to have these lines. Any society worth living in, Article 10 was drafted specifically to say it is not an absolute right. It cannot be an absolute right. If it's an absolute right, it just gives power to these people who are flooding social media to say these horrible things. I think it's really dangerous to the cohesiveness of society as a whole. I agree, we shouldn't be focusing just on this one foolish boy. He is still a boy. Hopefully he'll grow up and have a chance to reflect. But this is our chance, isn't it, to draw that line in the sand. You do not publicly celebrate the murder of somebody and expect to get respect, influence, power. We have to draw the line in the sand somewhere. And this is it.
Well, that was the editor of Spite Online, Tom Slater, and member of campaigning group Fair Cop, Sarah Phillimore. Big round of applause. Next, on Free Speech Nation, journalist Helen Joyce will be telling us about the trans activist weaponising of the justice system. See you in 2 minutes.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, if you're heading off to the Mediterranean, then there's plenty of dry, sunny and very warm weather on offer over the next few days. There may well be a few showers just moving into the far north of Portugal and the far north of Spain on Monday, but most of Iberia, dry, sunny and very warm, if not hot. The same across Italy, most of Greece, the Balkans and Turkey. Just 1 or 2 afternoon thunderstorms here and there. And the outlook is for it to stay pretty settled, dry and sunny for the vast majority, and very warm indeed.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, low pressure dominates, bringing wet and windy conditions. We have a Met Office yellow wind warning in force for England and Wales this evening and overnight and into Monday. So low pressure dominates, moving its way eastwards through Sunday night and into Monday with some strong winds, so 60 to 70 miles per hour along the exposed coasts. The band of rain will continue to push its way through, mainly affecting northern parts of Scotland, clearer skies towards the south and east, but behind that, blustery showers across Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest, but a milder start to Monday compared to Sunday. So like I said, we still have that wind warning in force across England and Wales, but for Scotland, it's a damp start across the north. Lighter winds here though, and then across Northern Ireland to start Monday morning, showery, especially across northern parts of England as well, where it could be heavy at times. Best of the brightness really focused across East Anglia, the Midlands and the southeast to start the day. But inland, 45 to 55 miles per hour is possible across England and Wales, so take care, especially during rush hour. Otherwise, showers affecting Northern Ireland and merging to give longer spells of rain across Northern England, Northern Wales as well. Towards the south of that, some sunny breaks, but also blustery showers that will rattle through pretty quickly, highs of up to 18 or 19 degrees. To start Tuesday then, it's actually a much brighter start out there. The low pressure will shift its way eastwards, so we'll start to see lighter winds. There'll be a few showers around, mainly across a northern part of England. Bright skies towards the southeast before sunshine turns hazy later, and then we see the return of more wet and windy weather on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. A former police officer believed to have reported Graham Linehan to police over his social media posts has been accused of using the courts to hound critics. Critics say it shows how the justice system is being weaponised against free speech, and one of those targeted is our next guest. Joining us in the studio to discuss this is journalist Helen Joyce. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
People were shocked seeing Graham, one of our great comedy writers, being arrested at the airport, 5 armed police. But he's not the only person who's been targeted this way, right?
That's right. I've known about this now for on and off the past couple of years, not just me, several other people I know. The way it works is this. Somebody who has what's called a monitored characteristic, so one of the 5 characteristics that count for hate crime, so that's your race, religion, disability, sexual orientation and transgender status, you can make a report of something that you regard as being hateful towards you, and the police will write it down. They're told they just have to write it down. They're not to ask you about it. They're not to be suspicious in any way. And then it can go along this weird parallel route that I did not know existed, which is that they don't actually investigate it and they don't, charge you or try you or any of those old-fashioned things. They just put it on the database and then they may or may not put your name against it. So the person who did, as we think, reported Graham for these tweets, also about a year ago started talking about how he had reported me to the police. So his name's Lindsay Watson. He's a trans woman. That means he's a man who identifies as a woman. And he's a former cop. He was fired in 2023 for an enormous harassment campaign against Harry Miller, another free speech campaigner. He was kicked out of the police for gross misconduct. And since then, he seems to have made a full-time hobby, as far as I can tell, for reporting people who say that men can't be women.
And he knows how the system works.
Exactly, exactly. So he started to say that he had reported me for various sexual harassment, sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault and harassment. And seriously, I'm sitting there going, don't remember this.
I just wrote a book.
Yeah, I really didn't do any of this, but against a trans woman. And then nothing happened. Like, he kept saying, the police will be at my door, she's going to get her collar felt, she'll feel the long arm of the law if they don't prosecute her, I'll take a private prosecution, I'll judicially review them if they don't prosecute her. All of this, all the time, on Twitter and on Blue Sky. As it happens, in May this year, I made a crime report about him, because he gave a tweet in which he carefully worded it, but it sounded like saying that people like me, if people like him weren't so peaceable, people like me wouldn't be long for this world. And that was after a lot of other unpleasant tweets and saying things about knowing my home address and, giving my middle name and my birth date and things like that.
That sounds like harassment.
Exactly. So I reported him for harassment. You may or may not be surprised to know this has gone nowhere.
Greater Manchester Police and Lincolnshire Police are bouncing it between the two of them, each saying
So
he lives in the
5
other
armed
patch.
policemen didn't turn up at his door?
They haven't even decided 5 months later which of them is going to look at it. However, it turned out he actually did report me for a crime last November. And that crime related to something that had happened a year earlier, which is that I spoke at an event with another trans woman called Frida Wallis, who drank right through it, used a lot of rude words, which I can't say, pre-9 o'clock.
You've seen the footage, it's pretty funny.
You've seen the footage. You can look at it, it's online. It's age restricted, but I think all of you are old enough to look at it. He wore a very short miniskirt and fishnets, and they were ripped, and there was some speculation as to what something at the top of his thigh was, and I was able to say, no, it wasn't a part of the male anatomy, it was just a bulge of thigh fat. Now, this is somebody I've had blocked online, but I tweeted a few times about it, and I said that I called him Fred instead of Frida. I said he was a man. I said he, him. I explained the thing about the thigh fat. That was it. Oh, no, I said he was a fetishist, because he said he was a fetishist in the event. And that's what Lindsay Watson reported.
And so you then went to the police, and then you found out that your name is actually
Well, what
next to
happened
this.
was they put it along this parallel thing, which I didn't know about. They never even got in contact with me. Oh, they also said that I had got his phone number, Frida Wallis's phone number, and had phoned him and abused him and told other people to do that, and people had done that at his workplace. I didn't do any of that. I don't have his phone number. I never make abusive phone calls. I didn't find out until he decided to take a judicial review of my home police force for not prosecuting me. And I count as an interested party, so they sent me their defence. So for the first time, I see laid out over several dozen pages how this all got recorded, what happened, what these famous tweets of mine were, what was said on the phone call, what Frida Wallis said when they phoned him, how it got recorded, and it had this mention of a non-crime hate incident. So I thought, oh, have they recorded that? So I put in a subject access request and discovered actually a crime, the crime of harassment, had been recorded with my name against it for all of that.
And that's on the system?
That's on the system. It's on the police national database. It's not my criminal record. I don't have a criminal record. It's recorded, and they left their name with it, which they're not necessarily meant to do, because they think I might do it again. And I've just done it again. So, yes, they're right on that.
So, well, I mean, this is... What's scary here is you're getting the police being kind of used in a way by activists...
Totally.
...to go after what they see as their opponents. And the police are kind of going along with it.
Well, the thing is, I spent a lot of time this week looking at the Home Office statutory guidance on the recording of hate crime and non-crime hate incidents. And actually, I think the police were basically doing what the guidance says. It says, for example, that when somebody makes one of these reports, you must believe them. Don't question them about it.
So the problem starts at the top, then?
The problem is this whole system of parallel recording of hate incidents that are not properly investigated or anything like that. And if you know what you're doing and you say all the right things, you can get somebody's name recorded there. This won't show up on my criminal record, but if I had to do an enhanced DBS check for a sensitive job, it would show up then, and the person doing the check would have to decide whether they include it in that enhanced DBS check. And I think they would, wouldn't you, for criminal harassment?
And it should be pointed out, it's not just Graham, it's not just you.
No.
This has affected many, many people who have been targeted.
Well, I'm literally in a Lindsay Watson support group on WhatsApp where we share, you know, keep each other's spirits up and say, you know, they say he's back in Manchester again. No, Manchester say he's in Lincolnshire, you know, this sort of thing. Because it's, you know, honestly, it's Kafkaesque. We're simultaneously trying to get them to take crimes this man is committing against us seriously and trying to work out what to do with this weaponisation of the crime recording system.
Yeah, and this is the very final point is that I just going to say is that if the police don't progress with the complaint, then he then complains about the police and he keeps on escalating it until I guess he gets what he wants. Look, I don't want to be part of this WhatsApp group, so we reached out to Lindsay Watson for comment, but have not yet received a response. Thank you very much for joining us, Helen.
You're very welcome.
Next on Free Speech Nation, Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union reveals all about the bizarre threat from the University of Leeds following her interview with Graham Linehan. You don't want to miss it. See you in 2 minutes.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight.
Weekdays from 9 p.m.
What on earth is going on at our universities? So Professor Stephen Greer had worked for the University of Bristol for 36 years when his career was halted after a false accusation of Islamophobia. The issue arose when Greer taught about the Charlie Hebdo attacks during a human rights module, and a student who didn't actually attend the course complained. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Stephen Greer himself to explain what happened. Stephen, thank you very much. Tremendous to have you on the show. Can you just explain the circumstances that led up to you being accused of Islamophobia, please?
Well, out of the blue, or almost out of the blue, I received a complaint about a module I'd been teaching on a unit, a human rights unit, entitled Islam, China and the Far East, for nearly 15 years without incident. Which included the increasing critical literature about human rights issues in Islam, China, and the Far East. And my principally, as I said, the principal complaint, it did include a complaint about Charlie Hebdo, but the principal complaint was about the fact that I had referred students to the authoritative academic literature. And the student who complained was the president of BRISOC, the University of Bristol Islamic Society, who was a medical student who'd not attended any of the course himself, and he claimed to be acting on behalf of anonymous students. And there were all kinds of other procedural irregularities in the complaint, but the university decided to entertain it anyway. Okay. And I was exonerated after a 5-month inquiry. Then the university said, well, they were publicly announced. They took the module off the syllabus.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Welcome back for the final time to Free Speech Nation. A former University of Leeds student, Connie Shaw, says she was threatened with expulsion after interviewing writer Graham Linehan on her student radio show. She claims the university warned she'd face further discipline if she ever spoke out about it publicly. Well, now she's graduated and she is telling her story with the backing of the Free Speech Union. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Connie Shaw. Hello. I think you came on the show, was it about a year ago now?
Yes, December last year.
December last year. You told us a story. It seemed shocking, but we didn't get the full picture.
Oh, that wasn't even bad compared to what happened next. Just after I'd been suspended, permanently removed from my committee position at Leeds Student Radio, I then got a letter from the head of the philosophy department telling me that the department that was signed by him were launching disciplinary action against me for allegedly harassing a member of staff. And it all came about because of my interview with Graham Linehan, and I'd also written an article for his Substack. And in the article and on the podcast, one of the examples I used about how gender ideology had taken over campus was the fact that one of the people teaching me feminist philosophy last year was a man who identified as a woman. And I never named this person. I just used it to explain how, on the module, not only was there not a single gender-critical paper on the reading list, even though 40% of the module was about gender ideology, about how you define a woman, but all of the essay questions were also pushing students. You had to sort of accept the premise that transphobia was a real thing, but then also the person marking your essay doesn't just agree with the ideology but embodies it. And I just made the statement that as a gender critical student that probably is quite concerning. And there were five main allegations. One was that I had repeatedly misgendered in the podcast with Graham. Apparently I had repeatedly misgendered this person, this man, and that I had told Graham that it was an honour to interview him and therefore not distanced myself from his views.
It's an honour to interview, by the way, Connie.
that I had they claimed that the term trans-identified male, which I used, was a slur. And it was just an absolute barrage of just crazy things.
And I went at university.
Yeah, yeah.
This is where you're meant to question things, put things forward.
I went to the preliminary investigation, and they read out I had to comment on each allegation. And I said in that interview, I think that the university's policies are discriminating against me on the basis of my gender-critical views. And then the university got back to me and they put in writing that because I said that, they were then escalating the matter. So because I said I was worried about being discriminated against, that's victimisation. And then it went to a committee hearing, and once you go to a committee hearing, the alleged offences become classed as major or serious on par with physical damage and the abuse, like physical abuse of someone. At that point, the Free Speech Union instructed an external lawyer that we do for some people when their case needs it. It normally would have cost thousands of pounds worth of time. I'd paid £30 for my membership. He helped write up a 16-page legal defence for me, because once your offences become major or serious, you can either be suspended or fined up to £500 or just expelled. So and this was during my exams. I was right in the middle of my dissertation. I was thinking, is there any point in continuing this?
If you hadn't had that support...
I don't know what I would have done without the Free Speech Union. And Toby Young wrote a letter to the Vice-Chancellor telling her that you should call this off, it's unlawful. She replied saying there was nothing she could do. She did say to him, though, that if he happened to be in contact with me, to let me know about the wellbeing support at the university. There was no, like, I'll get in contact with her and tell her about the wellbeing support. And then I went to the hearing. It lasted about half an hour, and I got a call 2 hours later, and I was told that I hadn't been found guilty of anything, but I should sort of look towards the inclusivity policies, how to make my language, how to go about things more inclusive.
No apology for what you'd been through?
No, but then I said, you know, will I be able to... I'm planning to talk about this publicly, and they said, well, just to let you know, if you do talk about this publicly, you could face further disciplinary action. So I chose to remain quiet until I graduated, but yeah, it was just absolutely crazy. And it was, you know, the whole time this was going on, I couldn't speak about it, and people would still ask me about the student radio stuff, and I was just thinking, God, if only you knew. Yeah, it was mental. And I wrote my dissertation in the end on, well, not in the end, but I wrote it on the definition of a woman, and I ended up getting a first in my dissertation defending the definition of women being adult human female. My supervisor mysteriously changed halfway through the year, which never happens. I don't know what the reason for that was, but it was very suspicious because that never normally happens. So yeah, and now I'm able to talk about it.
Because has the law changed now that in terms of free speech at universities, that this wouldn't happen again, hopefully?
Well, hopefully it wouldn't happen again. Obviously, the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act, the guidance that the Office for Students has given with it is very robust. And one of the things that they won't be able to do now is basically give NDAs to students who go through these things. So had the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act been in place when I was going through this, it's very unlikely that they would be able to tell me that I couldn't talk about it publicly.
I want to finally talk about one more thing. I remember you did a thing with a friend where you went out into your campus and you invited debate, basically. And were you inspired by Charlie Kirk?
Yeah.
Partly what
yeah, really, really. It genuinely was. This is such a great idea, and it's so devastating, and it's hard not to get emotional about these things. But it's just, not only is it so awful what's happened, but the reaction to it, and people who have gone to the same educational institutions that I have, who are genuinely justifying these things. And I remember how Douglas Murray says, you know, there are these occasions where it's like a flare goes up and you can suddenly see where everyone is standing. And this isn't just a fringe reaction celebrating Charlie's death, it's mainstream. And he's a student, and I'm so terrified for what the future is now. I've just come back from a week in Israel, and we have a lot to learn. Yeah.
I know, it's been a very tough few days. Thank you for coming in and speaking to us. Leeds University Union and Leeds Student Radio, but they are yet to reply. However, Leeds University Union previously said exclusivity is one of our core values, helping to ensure that everyone can enjoy their university experience free from discrimination. And I hope that you will continue to speak out, Connie, and all of us who've been affected by what happened this week, Charlie Kirk. Thank you very much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. Thank you to all of my brilliant guests this evening. And if you want to join us live in the studio, be part of our wonderful audience, you can go to gbnews.com/tickets. Stay tuned for the brilliant Alex Armstrong tonight. That is next. Thank you very much for joining us and for watching Free Speech Nation. And again, our thoughts go out to Charlie Kirk's family. Thank you very much.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, low pressure dominates, bringing wet and windy conditions. We have a Met Office yellow wind warning in force for England and Wales this evening and overnight and into Monday. So low pressure dominates, moving its way east